5th, 2015. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, on tonight's agenda, presentations none, guest speakers none. So we'll move right to the approval of the council meeting minutes for, and if we could, we can do them both at the same time. December 1st, 2014, town council minutes, and then December 1st, 2014, the closed minutes. Do I have any additions or corrections?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, a motion to approve, second. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous, thank you.
I was gonna say nay again, just see if I can get a charge out of everybody.
Next up on the agenda, police report.
Good evening. I'm Trooper Smith, and I'm filling in for Corporal Noise this evening. But for the month of December, I just like typical of the holidays, you'll see a little uptick in a few things. In terms of traffic, we had total number of stops 139, composed of 63 citations, 102 warnings, and 19 repair orders. Let's see, we had about 10 disorderly conducts, 13 assist others. We had 18 alarms that were related to a business, and additional 12 related to residences. 15 calls for suspicious persons, 2 trespassing, 9 theft, and 5 traffic complaints, 3 destruction of properties. A total number of checks, we had 125 that were in relation to a business, 30 in relation to a residence, 37 school checks, and 46 others. In terms of our arrests, we had 2 adult arrests, 3 juveniles, nothing related to CDS this month, which would be anything drug related, 4 in relation to a warrant or summons, and 4 assists. In relation to accidents, we had 8 that were an accident report was completed for, and 7 of those were the at-fault driver was charged. We had 10 that were just code 89s, and no DUIs for the month. Our total call summary came out to 455, with 22 being out of town limits. And I guess summary of the rest would be 9 total. There were a number of incidents you might have heard of. We had at the beginning of the month of December a few thefts from vehicles in the Nottingham neighborhood. Based off a tip from that, we were able to locate the vehicle that was involved. We did impound it in the Westminster Barracks and get a search warrant. Upon execution of the search warrant, we went through the entire vehicle, found 10 or 12 GPS units, a number of other items of stolen property that were ultimately seized and then given back to the victims. And then the 3 juveniles, I know Trooper Thompson on a call for 3 juveniles who broke into an open garage and attempted to steal beer. She followed up with that same night and was able to identify and charge those individuals. That was also in the Nottingham neighborhood. So, all in all, pretty busy, but also pretty eventful. We were able to follow up and close a lot of those reports out.
Okay, great. And Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, thank you for that great police work. Often we see on the Crime Watch pages that are popping up on Facebook, we hear these concerns are expressed in the neighborhood. But even myself, I did not know that the follow-ups occurred where you actually found and prosecuted. Is there a way we can get that information earlier so perhaps we can get it posted on those sites so the residents?
That's possible. Charges are still being, we haven't formally charged them yet with the theft and all that.
Okay.
But yeah, we can get.
We
something
should
together.
probably work together so we can get the positive information out there as well, so people
Right.
know that these issues have been addressed and in some cases resolved.
Exactly.
So good work, thank you.
And
Thank
I
you,
also
Chris.
had one question. I've had several complaints from residents who have either called or emailed or something, and you guys take care of the problem, but they receive no response. Is there any way that you can just hit those people back and say, got it, thanks? Or something so that they know that somebody got the email? Because they sit there for days thinking that they don't know whether they got the email or not. And then.
So we'll have to work on
Yeah,
communication.
so that's the only issue that I've heard over and over again, is they never know whether that you got the email,
Right.
okay? And that's it for me.
Okay, and then on a different note, I just wanted to relay something to you and to the community, something that sticks in my mind. I mean, of late, there've been a lot of difficult issues in the press about law enforcement and things, but something I wanted to relate to the community that I thought was really important. A year or so ago, after one of the tragic shootings in one of the schools up north, one of the resident troopers came and met with the mayor and myself. And the purpose of the meeting was the trooper wanted to ensure that our troopers in town were instantly ready and prepared to respond to the school, to anything that should happen or any incident in the school. But the thing that really resonated with me that I won't forget is the trooper's comment to me that if something happens, we are going to be there as fast as we can. We are going to get in there and we're going to do whatever we can. And if they get us, then that's what happens. But we're going to be there and do anything we can. So in a sense, what this trooper was telling the mayor and I was they were ready to sacrifice themselves to protect the children. So of all the things we hear in the news and the press, I thought that was a very poignant point. And the residents should know that that's the quality of the police protection we have here. So, I mean, to me, that was very important to just to bring up. So thank you.
Nice.
Okay, thank you. Any
Thank
other
you.
questions? Okay, thanks. Mount Airy Volunteer Fire Company.
Good evening. Our statistical report for the month of December. Rescue calls in Carroll, we had 84, in Frederick 63, in Howard 4, and Montgomery 3 for a total of 154. Fire calls, we had 12 in Carroll, 6 in Frederick, 1 in Howard, and 3 in Montgomery for a total of 22, which resulted in 96 incidences in Carroll, 69 in Frederick, 5 in Howard, 6 in Montgomery for a total of 176 calls for service for the month. We did have our elections in December, and I will be continuing as president, and Chief Stoll will also be continuing as the fire chief. So please feel free to continue to contact us for anything that's needed. Also, on the 18th of this month, we will again have our country breakfast, and we had a overwhelming response to our breakfast with Santa. We had 521 people. We've never had that many people. They were actually waiting outside to get in, so it overwhelmed us. And, many times I've come to the town council and I hear people in the town talk about the spirit of Mount Airy and why they like Mount Airy. And I just wanted to relate what has happened, something that happened over the holidays at the firehouse. We were almost inundated with cookies, cakes, candies, and things of that nature, so we will be implementing a new physical fitness program. But we actually even had one family buy the duty crew breakfast on Christmas. So we're very appreciative of the community support. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Next item on the agenda is citizen concerns, citizens' comments. This is time that the council sets aside to hear from anybody on any subject. Do you have anybody who wishes to speak this evening?
Good evening, everyone, and good evening to everyone at home watching on TV, and a Happy New Year. I'm Peter Ballas, and I'm here on behalf of the Mount Airy Historical Society tonight. I'm here to announce the honorees for the Hall of Fame, the 2015 honorees. But first, I'd like to share this with all the citizens of our community. The Hall of Fame lost a very valuable, and the community in Mount Airy lost a very valuable member. And I want to get this right. On December the 29th, on January the 29th, this lady was born in 1937, and she passed away on December the 27th, 2014, Mrs. Elaine Dean. Elaine was a Hall of Fame honoree in 2010. She did many, many outstanding things for our community, and especially with the Mount Airy Net. And I wanted to take this opportunity to remember Elaine. She was a wonderful person. So now it's time to announce the honorees for this year's Hall of Fame. The Hall of Fame banquet will be held March the 17th, 2015 at the American Legion. Tickets will be available starting September the 1st, and this year only at the Basket and Blossom Boutique, or the Blossom and Basket Boutique. Sometimes I get those confused. And tickets will be $22 a person. Tickets will be on sale from the 1st of February until the 4th of March. And the honorees for this year are Diane Main Linton, Mr. Terry Baker, Mr. Don Brightwell, Mr. Bob King, and Mr. Harvey Tabler. To all those people that did a nomination form, thank you so much. For all those people that didn't do a nomination form, there are many people in our community doing great things. There are many people doing great things. Let me repeat that. There are many people in our community doing great things. So if you didn't nominate someone last year, you have a chance next year. Thank you. Now, speaking as Pete Ballas, instead of something else, Pete was here in July of 2013. There was conversation about the Flatiron Building. One of Pete's favorite subjects, Flatiron Building. And I have my copy of the paper from the Carroll County Times, and I was quoted that night as saying that I'm not wedded to the existing building. Well, folks, I have to tell you I was wrong about that. I was wrong. In the year and a half since, I've given this a lot more thought, and the Flatiron Building needs to be preserved for our town. It needs to be preserved as it stands. We're talking about small town charm. And as a small town charm kind of guy, I ride through the town every day reliving my childhood. And you can count on that. I ride from my house up Watersville Road, take a left-hand turn on North Main Street, and ride down past the school, past my house, down across the railroad track, through the town I remember as a child, and past the Flatiron Building. So I'm coming to share with you folks, I made a mistake. I want to see the Flatiron Building preserved. There's not a Flatiron Building in Union Bridge, New Windsor, Manchester, Hampstead, Sykesville, Gamber, Westminster, only in Carroll County in Mount Airy. I like to see the Flatiron Building preserved, standing right there at the corner of Park and South Main Street. And I wanted to share that with you folks tonight, and I appreciate all your help that you've given me toward that goal, and hopefully we'll be able to see the Flatiron Building restored to the way it was in the 40s and the 50s. Thank you so much.
If I could take a minute to congratulate Councilman Bob King. That was quite an accomplishment.
I know you're too modest to expect it.
Well deserved. Well
Thank you.
deserved.
Thank you.
Any other citizens' comments? Okay.
Chris, do me a favor.
Yeah.
Just announce
Okay,
You want to talk?
CMC, we're told that there's no volume at home. If you can hear me, go ahead and, I guess, wiggle the camera if you would, please. So we'll see if the problem's here or, okay. All right, so they have us.
Does that have anything to do with the funding issue?
Oh, look, yeah, I think you just
They're
got
waving yes.
Yeah, I think you just got an
Yes.
acknowledgement on that one.
R2D2, yeah.
What happens if they go circuit? Sorry, okay.
Are we
Sorry.
ready?
Yeah, sorry, Brett, go ahead, thank you.
They won't have any problem hearing me as usual.
Sorry for the interruption.
Okay. I have one subject tonight, and it has to do with a newspaper article that was in the paper a few weeks ago, front page spread on Carroll County Times. And if you haven't read it, the announcement was that this town has over $13 million of slush fund hanging around. They did not use the term slush fund, and I guess I had the article and I think I left it at home. Unrestricted funds, it was called. There were any number of terms used to indicate that we can do anything with this money we want to do. There were probably 5 or 6 different terms indicating that it's just sitting there. I called town hall because I didn't believe it. And I was told that half of that money, $6.5 million, is earmarked for use by the Water and Sewer Commission. Let's start right off. I am a new member of the Water and Sewer Commission. I didn't insist, I didn't have to. I asked to be taken on a tour of the town's facilities. I was unfamiliar with them. I visited water pumping stations, well stations. What our town manager or maintenance manager refers to as the poop pumping stations. Those are important, folks. If they break down, we're going to have a problem. Okay, bottom line, half of the money is earmarked for water and sewer. I also understand that there's something in the town regulations that say even though it's earmarked, they can take it away and use it. That reminds me of Maryland governors who like to steal from the transportation fund. So if you want to pull money out of the Water and Sewer Commission, it's earmarked, you're going to have a fight on your hands. Okay, so we have 6.5 that's earmarked for that. I was told that we have over $3 million in debt that the town has. Shouldn't we consider some of that money we've got to go toward the town debt? On top of the town, that leaves about $9 million, or $4 million, after we account for that. People are talking about putting Center Street through to Route 27. They're talking about the Flatiron Building renovation. They're talking about a community center. When you get done with all that, that $13 million is gone, folks. We don't have $13 million of free money sitting there. We really don't. I've been called by other people on this subject. I've called other people, and everyone agrees to one thing. This is not town council money to play with. This is taxpayer money. The town council is accountable to us. One of the people who called me said, it's taxpayer money, give it back. I do not agree with that. I'll just state that. It was said in the article on the front page of the Carroll County Times that the town council doesn't have the expertise to determine what to do with all this money that's sitting there. And I ask each of you, which one of you campaigned telling us that you didn't have the expertise to do the job? I want to know. Because I didn't hear it and I was listening closely. One caller who called me suggested that there be a referendum that the town council shouldn't be free to determine what happens with this money. It should be a referendum. I don't necessarily agree with that. I was a political science major. We have a republic. We elect you guys to take care of this stuff for us. We can't have a referendum every time we need something.
But I countered that idea with the mayor has the power to call a task force. Certainly there are people who live in this town that have various kinds of expertise who can be consulted without paying $70,000 or $50,000 to a consultant group. You're taking our taxpayer money and sending it out to a consultant group who will come back and give you an opinion. That opinion, if you send it out, ask the same question to 5 consultant groups, do you think they're all going to give you the same answer on what to do with our money? You get 5 different opinions, so which one's going to be right? You still have to make a decision. You can't pick one consultant group and do what they tell you. One caller wondered about the negative impact this article could have on the town of Mount Airy. We're sitting there bragging about the amount of money that we have. It was stated in the article, we have more than the city of Westminster. Better than that, we have more than the county of Carroll. And it was stated that the money is sitting there doing the town no good. I sent an email to all the town council members, I believe, saying, is savings account not a good thing? How many of you have a savings account to account for unanticipated expenditures? That's a prudent way to go. Throwing it away is not. Somebody mentioned that advertising it the way it was stated might have a negative impact on our request for grant money. You go to the county or the state and ask for grant money and they say, out of your pockets over there. So throwing this around as casually as it was, I think probably wasn't a good idea. Okay, I already covered that. I got about 2 more things to do. The entire council, did the entire council authorize this article? Was it the idea, the consensus of the entire council, or did one individual on the council promote this article on the front page? I don't think it's up to one individual to make these kind of statements publicly without the foreknowledge of every other council member. Last thing I have to say is to summarize, for my part, that article was a very public display of a lack of respect for taxpayer money. Thank you very much.
Could I make one correction? You said we were
Sure.
$2.5 million in debt. I think we're actually like $7.5 million in
I
debt,
said more than 3 million.
I think
I hedged.
right? 7.5,
We have a
7.5.
lot of indebtedness, and I think
Yeah.
Every time we get down, I think we're going to be
Well,
like 7.5.
as the CFO, I'd like to respond. I don't disagree with what you've said, I've talked to you, but I just want the citizens of Mount Airy to know that I do think it's our responsibility, be it that to look at investments, be it that to look at alternatives, be it that to look at low-interest loans, to take that money that we've been stewards of and use it for the best use for the citizens of Mount Airy. At no time will it be used for whatever we want. That's a pretty flippant statement. It would have to be used for the best use, and that's what I think that this council is charged with doing. And I hope they continue to research different ways to do that, whatever it is. We may disagree with the consultant issue. We may disagree with that. We have to find the best use of that money. An option is to give it back. Certainly, maybe that's not the preferred option, but we have to look at all the options. That is what we're charged with. That is what we were elected for.
Could I add one thing that you
Want
brought
stick?
to mind that I forgot? You can hit me with it.
Not on camera.
I recollected something, that's neither here nor there. I did a career in banking, and some people think that's a good thing, and some people think it's not so much a good thing. I recollected when I was thinking about all this, when the article hit the paper, that the town of Mount Airy and any other municipality in Maryland, probably most states actually, is not free to invest their money wherever they want.
True.
There are laws that stipulate, can't go to the stock market, that's risking taxpayer money. Pretty much the town is limited. For those who complain about the low return we get on our dollars, you're doing the best you can. Things called bankers' acceptances and the bank CDs that we all know we can purchase. But you can go look it up online. It is law in Maryland that the state restricts where towns can invest their money. So we don't have the access of going out to the stock market and getting the high returns or that they get on various instruments and insurance instruments and that type of thing. So we have to live with what we've got and do the best we can.
True.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rick, I'll give you two comments. One is, I essentially support everything you said. Part of the reason why we're having this discussion in public is to bring out all sides of the issue. So last time, I talked in terms of potentially hiring a consultant. Council didn't seem very keen on the idea, hence no RFP, RFIs hit the street. There's been suggestions of a task force. I've gotten suggestions from the community about talking to somebody at a university that may have expertise. So the primary reason behind the briefings I've been doing and trying to move us forward is to do just that. Start a dialogue, throw some ideas out, see what the community thinks about the ideas, and then figure out a way to move us forward. Because to date, we haven't moved that far forward. Now, where I'll come out against one of the two things you said, the idea that someone on the council tells the press to put an article on the front page that I know of, the
I
press
didn't
is,
say you said to put it on the front page.
you use some term about influenced or,
The implication I was attempting to make was the article was generated by you without the knowledge of the council.
so,
Period. Nothing more, nothing less.
okay, so, the press is free and open to query any council person
But you're
about
only
any subject.
one member of 5. You don't speak for all of them unless they
And-
authorize you to make those statements.
Rick, the press is free and open to interview anybody they want. I was asked questions, I always answer them, so that's where I'll disagree with your
We've
statement.
already
But
had an exchange about that you failed to respond to, didn't you? I was
The
told
point
the
is-
press called you about subject 1 and you flipped the subject to subject 2, and
Rick,
that's
I'm not
what the
gonna-
press told me.
Rick, let me cut you off. I'm not gonna get in a debate, I'm just saying two things. Number one is, I appreciate the ideas and the dialogue you've brought out, that's part of this process. The other part of it is the press is free and open, you'll have to query them, so thank you.
One thing finally, since you brought it up, that to indicate in the article, when they did attribute the comment to you directly, I don't have it here in front of me, so I can't quote it, that the town is not making the best use of the money, that they need to invest it in things, whatever it is you had in mind. The town is doing the best they can legally, unless you say take it out and put it into projects.
I guess there's two ways to interpret invest. One is invest, meaning take money,
Well, tell
put
us
it,
what you meant, because it wasn't clear enough.
put it in a stock and bond.
You can't do that,
Or-
it's illegal.
Hold on.
No,
There's two ways to interpret the word invest. One is to take the money, put it in some sort of security instrument,
CDs, or
CDs,
things
things like
that
or
are
that.
invest it in
Or-
the town
or-
infrastructure.
Please stop.
I hear you.
Please stop. Or take the money and invest it in infrastructure with the expectation that an investment in the community, infrastructure, services, whatever, brings some sort of return in either terms of human capital, quality of life, or something like that. So that's all. All right, thanks. Thank you. Any other citizens' comments, concerns? Great. Okay, seeing none. Moving on to ordinances and resolutions, we'll begin with ordinance 2014-17, revise and amend the zoning map. This was already introduced in December. It's here this evening for passage. So I think I need a motion first to get it on the table and a second before discussion.
Make a motion.
We have a motion to pass the ordinance
I'll second it.
and a second.
I'm sorry, who made the motion to pass it?
Ken
Okay.
made a motion, Bob seconded.
For change. Different one.
All right. Again, this is the final step in our master plan. This motion actually changes the legal zoning of many properties that have been discussed in council, discussed in planning. Also, at this point in time, the council will take discussion and/or questions and concerns from the community if we have any. Any questions, comments, concerns from the community? Okay, seeing none. Any council discussion?
Just exactly what are we trying to achieve here? The short and sweet version.
Short and sweet version, this finishes the master plan.
Okay. I'm
And-
good with that.
Okay, very good. All right, seeing no questions, concerns from the community, seeing no discussion from the council, I'll go ahead.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, we're good. We've already got that on
Okay.
table. So I'll go ahead and vote. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
And it's unanimous. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is for introduction only. This is ordinance 2015-1, the first of the year. And what this ordinance does is essentially make two changes to our zoning regulations. Why we have the ordinance. During the last planning commission meeting, we had a petitioner who was attempting to take advantage, attempting to interpret or interpreting one of our zoning ordinances to allow the parking of vehicles on lots with gravel. So the ordinance, as interpreted by staff, as interpreted by the planning commission, the ordinance is set up so that anytime you're parking a vehicle, something that may have fluids in it, it's always parked on pavement because that pavement goes into stormwater management. Then the ordinance does allow, the current ordinance does allow for storage of goods and materials on a gravel lot where there's no fluids involved. Well, we had a case where someone was saying that they were not parking vehicles, they were storing them. But during the testimony, the person trying to argue this point of parking vehicles versus storing them actually admitted they were parking vehicles. So this closes and better defines the ordinance that says, look, if you're parking a vehicle anywhere, it's got to be parked on pavement. The second change in here addresses an AD, go ahead Barney on the second one. That's the one on slopes.
Slopes for parking lot.
Yeah, slopes on parking lot, so we're in compliance with the Americans for Disabilities Act. So this is just for introduction only. Any questions on this one?
We discuss it next month, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I just want to get Barney's comments on that too, to ensure that all paving does go to stormwater management, that we're trying to achieve the goals.
Can we get credit for the rain tax on that?
Yes.
Yes.
Because these are changes to 112,
Yes.
it must go to planning.
Thank you. So we have to refer it to planning. Okay, so we'll refer it to planning. Thanks. Okay. Next on the agenda is ordinance 2014-19. This is a budget amendment to provide up to $55,000 to study a community center. So this was detailed and presented last time,
Yep.
last meeting, and there were no council questions then. Any questions on the, oh, sorry, I have to get somebody to introduce it first. I'll go ahead and introduce ordinance 2014-19,
And I will second.
and we have a second.
An excellent timing by the chairman of the Community Center Task Force.
Any discussion on the budget ordinance?
I know we've been discussing a lot of money here, and
Go ahead, Bob, and then we'll get.
you know, we're talking about $55,000. At time that I was the chair of Parks and Recs, we spent $50,000 on what became Windy Ridge Park to develop a master plan for the park, to look at all of the options. I think that's different than what we were discussing earlier about somebody telling us, or somebody to help us spend our money.
Oh, yeah.
I think that this is a very good expense. We are not, we don't, I'm a machinist. I don't build rec centers, you know, and so I think we do need some people to come in and help us with how we can best utilize the space. And like I say, we spent $50,000 for a master plan to Windy Ridge Park.
Mr. Mayor?
Just to reemphasize some points I made last month. Again, I think the Community Center Task Force has taken this as far as they can take it with their expertise. They've done an excellent job. They got us to a great point. This is number one in the survey. It was brought up tonight that we need to make decisions how to spend the town's money. This is a good decision to make. It's something that benefits the community. It'll help us move forward on the Flatiron Building, another issue that was brought up this evening, because that's kind of teetering depending on what we do with the community center. So this is just a win-win all the way around, and this is a good use of community funds for the community. So as I think the consensus was to approve, I hope we stay with that consensus.
Dick?
Let me start out by saying, I'm Dick Swanson, 1107 South Main Street. Let me start out by just saying I am in favor of community center, but I am against this RFP for up to $55,000 at this time. And the reason is fairly simple. and that is that Councilmember Everidge has come up here a number of times and spoken about the need for deciding the priorities and what we're going to do with our $13.5 million of reserves. By the way, the June 30th end of fiscal year 14 deficit was actually $5.8 million. I don't know if it's grown since then, and that's all water and sewer. What needs to be done, there are a number of things, and some have been mentioned tonight, of capital projects that the town is or has been looking at. And just to mention a few, I know the mayor talked about we need a certain amount of emergency reserves. We also have the Center Street project we're talking about, community center, Flatiron building, and what we do with that. And by the way, if we decide as a town to expand that across what is now Park Avenue and close that, there's a corollary project which is to put a road through the parking lot for trucks to get downtown. We also have questions about at what time in the future we may or may not need a local police force, and that would include initial capital expenditures to get them up and running. We have rails to trails, property purchases, and other things to deal with in the future. Water and sewer. In the next couple of years, we're probably going to be looking for additional water. We have the 60,000 gallons out there, and then we run out. I think we're in the first of 3 years, 2020, to those 60,000 gallons, and we will be looking for water. There have been a couple of recommendations made. One was Harrison Lashir, if that ever takes place, to develop that water. And I've talked to several council members about possibility of a land acquisition that has significant promise for bringing water online. That would be an ideal capital investment at this point in time, so that we're ready to develop that when we have the need, rather than scrambling in the future to figure out where we're going to get additional water. That just names a few of the projects that have been talked about. My recommendation in lieu of appropriating $55,000 at this point in time is to take a look at those projects, rough estimate of the cost of those projects, prioritization of those projects, and then looking at some sort of time phasing, because some probably come before others. For example, do we need water before we could build a community center or complete Center Street for development? And I think that that can be done in a short period of time to come up with a rough idea of the priorities and the costs and where we're going, find out where a community center fits in, and then that'll tell you the appropriate time when you need to get some technical advice or expertise on costs and approaches to fulfilling those needs for a community center. So my recommendation is pretty simple, and I'm going to give you just a kind of pro forma worksheet that gives you an idea of those projects, where to go from here, and say if we could do that as a town, we could probably rough this thing out in about a month, come back at February's meeting, and talk about where these projects fall in line and priorities, and whether they should be funded out of reserves or debt by taking on additional debt. So I say that we've already got $5.8 million in debt now. We have $13.5 million in reserves, and that's assuming that the debt has not increased since June 30th, 2014. So I'm going to pass this out, and my recommendation is defer on the $55,000. Take a look at this, and when you feel it's appropriate to go ahead with the community center based on your other demands on capital reserves, feel free then to come out and say that's when we need to get some expertise. Until then, we're putting money into something that may not occur for 5 years or so down the road.
Councilman?
Mr. May?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said, but we're missing an important component here. We don't know what a community center will cost. We've worked on this task force for over 2 years. I've personally manned a community center for the teens 4 years prior to that. This is long overdue, long overdue. We have the funds. This is the desire of the community. The council was elected to make a difference. You're sitting at this table tonight. Please do not defer this funding.
Could I ask the mayor, where are these funds coming from?
Charlene's not here, but we have them in, we'll have an account line item
Park reserves.
for this, for park
Park
reserves.
I'm talking
yes.
about the funds for the center if it's approved.
At this point, we do not know what the funds will be. We're trying to do the research. We're trying to do due diligence. We're trying to do what the community has wanted us to do. At this point, we need to find out, are we going to build a multi-million-dollar center, or are we just going to do a small room for the teens? We do not know. The Community Center Task Force has worked for 2 years. I'm sorry if I get a little passionate about this, but I spent 4 years on this before the Community Task Force was even formed. For us to keep putting this ball down the road is ridiculous.
By the
Yeah.
way, the number one desire of the town back in, I believe it was the late 40s, early 50s, was a community center. So this is an old issue. This is.
I'm getting tired of punting.
And I agree, but I think the approach is to defer this particular RFP in the interest of weighing all the capital priorities and capital requirements and seeing what comes first. For example,
You've made that point clear.
if you
You've
talk
made that
about,
point clear.
if you talk about the Flatiron Building, for example, if you were to go ahead with that project and you were elected to start out with a small center and then build out at some point in the future as you work towards that, if you so desire to commit the funds to do the Flatiron Building, does the Flatiron Building come before the Center
You're
Street?
also holding up the Flatiron Building. This would be holding up the Flatiron Building. We need to move forward.
Thank you.
I'm Amethyst Timok. I'm actually the chairwoman of the Community Center Task Force. And just to kind of, I think they're all valid points. And I think we can't look at the community center and this RFP as each thing a separate pin. Some of these things could be collinear, like the Center Street project, the Flatiron Building. And that's where we got to as a task force. What we're looking for is clarity. This might not even be something that can come to fruition. We don't know because there are so many variables, but if the funding is there, we can move forward and know how to expand in some of these directions, whether it be the Flatiron, what size we could need. We also have outside groups who have approached us, so the capital campaign or funding it, we don't know because there are outside groups and there's several directions to go that it may or may not cost us money, but until we as a town have the ability to have those conversations with both companies in town and out of town, we are actually turning away opportunities. So that's just where I wanted to go.
It's a very good clarification. We've been approached by certain plans where it will not cost the town anything.
And we just
So
need
there's options out there that we're not taking advantage
So
of.
this just helps us have like a narrative or a guiding point so that when we do go into meetings about economic development, about Center Street, because we're looking for that clarity. It could be a spot down there. It could be the Flatiron. There are several variables that are way beyond our capacity. And
It could
having this,
help poke Center Street through.
It could.
And actually,
and these-
development is looking to put Center Street through, not the taxpayers of Mount
And
Airy.
what we're finding is the longer we have this task force and the longer we have these dialogues, it's ballooning. And there are a lot of things that we can't commit to or even say. So people are against something that doesn't even exist. We're all getting our own distorted opinion of what this center is and what it represents. So we just kind of like to change the conversation, if you will. Thank you.
Thank
Can I
you.
ask a question before you
Yes.
move?
Wait, hold on. Get Councilman. Right, go ahead, Councilman.
I just want to ask a quick question. I think last meeting you mentioned that there's 3 locations that you've narrowed it down to.
We as a community, as a task force, we have ideally in our head said these seem like they're great. They meet our core values that we set forth as a community center. We do have a mission statement, and there were 3 properties that we kind of had said, these might be great, but then when a company comes in, they may initially throw 1 or 2 out, be like, no, you might, that your heart might be in that, but that just would not even work in any capacity. And that's what we have done as a community center task force, and I'm sorry, Chris, you said not to go into too much detail.
No, please.
Because we aren't committed to anything. accept these kind of ideals that we have through the surveys and through participation, kind of brought into a, we have 5 things that we've narrowed it down to that the town needs. And even within those 5 things, there's a small, medium, and large scale. So like a meeting room, what does that mean? And we spent a lot of time discussing what a small and what small mean. Is this a small meeting room, or is this a medium room, or is this a large meeting room? What's the value of it? What activities can you put in it? And just that conversation took an entire meeting to talk about meeting in a meeting room. And then what we would facilitate. And those things they get bigger and bigger and beyond our scope, and then it just becomes a dialogue of what color we're painting this building we haven't even built. And then an outside group would come to a meeting and be like, hey, we're really interested in partnering. Well, what does that mean? And they said, call us when you actually know what it is you want. And that's where we're at. And that we just, you're right, we should prioritize what the town, our plans are for all these things going on, but this might help us move forward with several projects, or might just clear this out for a while. We aren't sure. We don't know.
Yeah, so Ken, to help with, because as a liaison to the Community Center Task Force, to help, again, a little bit with the reason to spend the money. As Amethyst said, the task force was given a charge. The town surveys have always clearly indicated this is of great interest to the community. Task force held several meetings, very well attended, lots of folks asking questions. And what the study does is, based on the Community Center Task Force input, the study will come up and say, look, here are essentially 3 options, and here's what they cost to do. Here's what they cost to build. Here's what they cost to run. So, how do we move forward if we have no idea what different options would cost to build and to run? This is the next logical step for them. So they've been asked to do it. The community has asked them to do it. Very cognizant of Dick's points. Dick's points about holding off or on target in the realm of budgets. But without this information from this study, again, we can't properly lay out our priorities. We have a study on Flatiron. We know Flatiron will cost X, Y, or Z based on what we do. Community center, we do this one, the community center will cost X, Y, or Z. So those are the inputs to, okay, how do we move the ball forward? So.
To be honest with you, I thought that when the task force come back, they would come back with some type of written report to state certain locations or something like that, that more than what the information that we received.
It was, right, Ken, so it was more, sorry.
That was my hope, when they come back with the task force, that we would have that information, some of that information that we were gonna pay $55,000 for.
So, the key points of our mission statement, that it be within the downtown limits. We'd like it to be something that brings people downtown. So that was a guiding force, that it be, a lot of feedback, that it be walkable, bikeable, and drivable, because parking is gonna become an issue. So we have narrowed down it into town. That kind of breaks it down into 4 possible locations for you.
Right.
There's only 4 possible scenarios of places that it could happen in town.
But the one
If you
thing,
could direct, this was the charge of the Community Center Task Force pinned up on this wall. What needs are not being met, they identified that. How do we meet those needs? They identified that with 3 options. Ongoing management, they're looking at that. That's why we need a consultant. They've exhausted their expertise. There's only a certain amount that you can get out of volunteer organizations.
sorry, yeah, my apologies, but Ken, that's the bottom line is what the mayor just said. It's the task force has now come to the limit of their expertise as volunteers. The point of expending the money is to get an expert to tell them, it will cost you this. This is what you need to budget for a small center. This is what you need to budget for a medium center, large center. Again, just like we did with the Flatiron building. Now, I'm going to open myself up to Mr. Blatchford, but hey, I'll do that. The bottom line to this, because this is one of his comments about the whole area of expertise. If you just inherited, I'll use this number, instead of 13, I'll use 4 million. If you just inherited $4 million as an individual, I think you would want to engage an expert on how best to invest that money. Because as an individual, you may not have the expertise to do that. That's similar to what the Community Center Task Force has said. Look, we've laid out the plan, that we now need expertise to tell us how to cost it, the costing comes here, goes in with the Flatiron Building, and then we try to make a decision, so.
Thank you, Amos. Thanks for being here tonight. It's very important.
Rick Blatchford again, I didn't plan to make a joke, but you fed me one.
At my risk.
No, mine, actually. There was a time in my life when I was deemed to be an expert. I didn't particularly care for that title, so I came up with my own definition. An X is a has-been, and a spurt is a glorified drip. Okay? Think of that when you hire your experts. Okay. One thing about this town survey, and this came up in a discussion I had with people, and I called some people, but people called me also, and I'm not quite sure why, but it happened. We talk about the town survey, and I understand I was involved with it a little bit, and people want more. And after a discussion with one person, the thought came to me, ever since I came to Mount Airy, I came to Mount Airy to get out of the hubbub of Montgomery County. And a lot of people, I'm not the only one, a lot of people came out to get away from it. Come out to the rural county. The word is bucolic, I believe. Relax. And guess what? We're trying to build it back up so it looks like Frederick. Yeah, that's what this is what just
Not me, sir. That's not what I ran on.
That's my one comment.
Yeah, that's my response.
Secondly, about this bucket of $13 million, one thing I forgot to state, this is not a bottomless bucket. As a matter of fact, the bottom has pretty much been arrived at. We've got 13 million. How did we get it? During the building boom that ended about 5 or 8 years ago. It isn't being refilled. You empty that bucket, it's going to be a long, long time before you get it back to 13 million, if ever. And then, as Mr. Swanson mentioned, you're going to have to go into debt. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Call it vote.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? Yep.
I wasn't going to say anything about the community center. I've said in the past, I'm not for a community center, but I would like to say this. I think we spent money to have a rendering and other aspects done for the Flatiron Building. And I think it is time, from my perspective and my tax money, to spend the $55,000 and have an expert look at this community center the same way it was done for the Flatiron Building. And I think that way we as a town will know where we're going on that, because we've kicked this around quite a long time. It's kind of like, it seems to me it's kind of like you're just beating your head against the wall. And we need to move forward. We need to move forward. So my thought is, I'm a conservative, I'm a Republican, I don't like spending money, but I think the council should vote to spend this money, get this moving on.
God bless you.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Councilman King?
Now, go ahead. I'll wait.
Okay.
I think when you have several competing interests in a bucket of money, and when you're talking about anywhere from 10 to 30% of our annual budget being taken out of reserves, I think that's more than a council should or could make with rational thought. I understand the consultants, but there's a lot of people coming to the table with wish lists. You've got the Flatiron Building, the community center, the 27 extension from Center Street. They all can't have it. Now, while I agree with consultants, you can get 5 different consultants to give you 5 different opinions. And I understand the concept to try to get an expert someone with more experience, et cetera. But if you're gonna do that, with a third of our town budget in reserve money, our legislature in Maryland doesn't spend a third of their budget money on any one project. That's bigger than the legislature.
Dr. O'Brien, this is not a third of our budget. Our annual budget is $3 million. This is $50,000.
No, I'm not talking about that, but I'm talking about the eventual project that
The
you're
eventual,
trying-
well, certainly, yeah, that will come back to the council.
Okay, that will come back to the council, but the people that are competing for these projects, shouldn't you do a consultant for every one of them? And
No.
then
Yeah.
put it out for a referendum for the voters.
Very well.
I don't think any one of you wants to take that burden on and be held accountable to the taxpayer. So while you're spending all this money on consultants, do them all.
Yeah.
Don't stop with one. Get it out there. There's a vote coming up, 2015. Rank them, pluses and pros and cons, advertise them, have public hearings about them, and let the voter decide.
Absolutely. That's what we're going to do. We're not there yet.
But don't
We have no
stop
idea.
with
Yeah,
don't
we
stop
have no
with
idea.
don't stop with just a community center. Do all of it. Do the bucket list like you put up on the spreadsheet. But remember, the one thing, the one glaring omission on your spreadsheet with all of the various interests was the taxpayer. They're the one that have the money in the game. That reserve list is a reserve, or that reserve fund is the taxpayer's equity in this town. So before you spend that on any project, remember that that's their equity, and that's in essence a raise in your taxes when you spend that equity, because it's taking away from our reserves. And the cold
Totally
day
agree.
that happens, you're gonna be looking to raise people's taxes.
Totally agree.
All I got to
Good
say.
point.
Thank
Good
you.
Thank you.
points.
Excellent, thank you very much. Fabulous. Any other questions, comments? Councilman King?
I've sat here and listened to this, okay, and I was going to ask if we might not defer for a month till we have our two absent members here.
Oh, the same thing.
And Mr. Ballas and his several revealing statements tonight that have showed me some insight into the man, I'm going to make a motion that we approve the not more than $55,000 be spent in researching the community center.
And if discussion is open, just to clarify, those two members by consensus said they approved it. By consensus at the last meeting.
Sorry, Bob, well, the motion's on the table so far.
Right.
So-
I'm supporting the motion on the table,
Okay.
that we spend the $55,000. And like I say, back in, Monica, how long ago was it? 10 years ago? We spent $50,000 on Windy Ridge Park, which is an 88-acre park. If we ever get the money to build that, we have a master plan. And it's a very long, involved, and fact-finding process that these people go through. They don't just come in and sit down and talk with you one time. We did the same thing on the 144 park, Old National Pike Park. where
Did the
we
same
that
thing on the
for Frederick
Flatiron
County.
building.
So, Monica and I have been involved in this 3 or 4 times. It takes money, and it is absolutely the best way to find out exactly what it is you want, need, and can afford.
Okay.
Well, your first statement was you wanted to defer till next month?
I was thinking that that's what I wanted to do, but Mr. Ballas has given me some courage tonight.
That would be my point. I would rather defer till next month when full council's here.
The full council already gave their consensus, so.
They haven't voted on it.
I'll rest my case.
They have not voted on it.
Sure. I hope we call the vote.
Well, the motion's on the table. The challenge then becomes if Councilman King, so I'll interpret Councilman King as calling for a vote in the positive. I'll interpret Councilman Phoebus calling for a request for a deferral and/or a no.
A strong encouragement from the mayor to move forward.
Strong encouragement from the mayor to move forward.
Excuse me, so Bob's just really approving the motion that was already,
Well, the motion's on the table, we haven't voted.
right, but I mean, that's
Motion's
what
on
he
the
was
table.
restating,
Yes,
correct?
yes, thank you.
I wasn't real sure whether the motion was on the table or not.
Well, that-
Can somebody call a point of order to call the vote
Well,
by Robert's rules?
We don't cover Robert's rules.
We can do Robert's rules.
well, but the chair can call for the vote. Let me offer something up and for council discussion. I've heard a lot of discussion, testimony tonight, which is why we're here to listen. I understand the mayor's position. I'm also the liaison to the Community Center Task Force, and certainly am for doing this. By the same token, Councilman Phoebus points out, the rest of the council's not here. So, Pat, I know you're gonna be unhappy,
Oh,
but
I've heard the consensus of those members. This has been kicked down the road for 4 years.
And I will agree.
Call the vote, Chris. If you're gonna vote against it, vote against it. But
the chair
vote
still
should
got
be
the
called.
floor. So I'm just looking to the councilman to say, I've heard enough discussion in public tonight. There's some trepidation, Councilman Phoebus's part. Bob, as angry as the mayor will be and the disappointment that probably I'll give to the Community Center Task Force, my opinion would be this issue has now boiled up and is controversial enough that the whole council should weigh in.
Well,
To speak on the
okay, go ahead.
proper procedure, I believe you have a pending motion, so if there is a motion to table that motion, that can be made.
Yes.
Right.
That motion should then be voted on. If majority vote to table, then it is tabled. If a majority does not vote in favor of the motion to table, then you go back to the pending question and it is called for vote.
Thank
So
you,
that's
yeah,
the proper
understood. And,
procedure.
right, and so I'm working towards whether or not I make a motion to table or not, so Bob.
I think there's some confusion and somehow this $100,000 is being lumped in with the $50,000, and I think that there's probably an issue there, and I don't think it would not be beneficial to maybe come back in a month and discuss this. But I'll go either, if you want to vote tonight, I'm ready to vote. I know how I feel about it. If you want to table it, I can support that also.
What do we lose by tabling it for a month and waiting for the full council to vote? What do we lose?
Same thing we lost last month. Another month.
I will say this, okay, that probably the number one thing that I've heard about since coming on the council was the paving of Main Street. It's done. Main Street's done. This was this $100,000 and the $50,000 was number 2. Okay, I've received a lot of comment, both for and against. Funny how when your phone number
Do you
gets
think
out
the
there,
members will
people don't
change
have
their
any
mind?
problem
I know
calling
one
you.
sitting right here will not. I'm pretty sure one right there will not. They've already given their consensus. We've already had this. And the only reason we even took this vote to this level is because nobody wanted to pull an emergency vote. So you kicked the can last month because you didn't want an emergency vote.
Right.
With assurances we'd vote on it tonight. Now we're kicking the can again. Do what you were elected to do. Vote yea or nay.
All right.
You have a quorum here tonight. You're voting on many other issues. If you're going to do that, anything can be controversial.
Mr. Everett, I'll support you whichever way you go on this one.
All right, so, I'll go ahead and withdraw my motion. So I made the motion to pass. I'll withdraw the motion. It doesn't kill it. In a sense, it pushes us off till next month when the full council's here.
Tom, do we gain anything by tabling the motion? By, actually having an official vote to table it?
Thank you. So can I table it instead of withdrawing it?
Well,
That way we won't have to reintroduce
Are
it.
you the original movant?
Yes,
Okay, then you can withdraw your motion.
certainly, but to
Procedure.
Bob's point,
What
Bob's point-
advantages do you gain by tabling it, or what advantages do you lose by tabling it?
I don't
table-
think you can do either to accomplish the result that whoever's looking for that result. I don't know when this was introduced,
Last
remember?
month.
I think,
Last
so
month.
75 we're at now, I think, under charter.
Yes.
So I think, I don't think it has to be reintroduced today to have it up again non-emergency next month, I don't believe. That would be the only consideration, but either way, procedurally, you can.
Right, so
you'd be in
procedurally,
the same
just
position.
to be perfectly safe, procedurally, I can withdraw it and then just reintroduce it. And that starts the clock all over again.
Well, you wouldn't have to reintroduce it if you're 75 days on it.
Yeah, he's just saying it as a belt and
Oh,
suspenders,
tonight?
just reintroduce it, and which it could be reintroduced tonight to start the clock.
But you're comfortable the clock's okay for next?
I believe it is.
Let me count real quick.
Okay, let's just verify that.
75 from the last meeting. Takes us beyond the next meeting, I
And
believe.
see, I think if you table it, you don't have to worry about that 75, is that correct? If you
There's a
just table it.
No, I think that you'd still have to worry about that.
Okay.
So.
That was my question.
Let's just let Debbie verify that.
We're good.
We're good?
We're good.
Okay, so, let me correct myself, for the record, I will table the motion.
Withdrawing your
Yeah,
motion.
I'm withdrawing the motion. That doesn't pull it from consideration, that just means,
Right, you can make the motion next time for its
Okay.
approval.
all right, so then for the record, I'll withdraw the motion. That way, we'll meet with the full council next month. All right, I know it makes some folks very unhappy, but given the amount of discussion from the public and the council,
And
I
I
think,
completely understand.
I think it's
I
reasonable to
completely
have full
understand.
council
You
here.
have 60% here voting tonight. You know,
Yep, okay,
okay.
okay.
For me.
You want to take 5 minutes?
No, I'll take 5. Y'all can continue.
Okay. Okay. Under unfinished business, the State Ethics Commission comments. Sir Pete.
Councilman Everidge, I'd like to regress just for a minute, and I'm a latecomer on this about the community center and appropriating the money. But I'd like to say this. I've been talking about the Flatiron Building since 2010. 2010, it was the Salt Dome. Pete, we can't do anything about the Flatiron Building because of the Salt Dome. And we didn't do anything. We didn't say anything. And in 2012, we finished up the Salt Dome. And in January of 2013, I still have an email from the mayor, and he said, Pete, I'm going to inspect the building. And it may not be prudent to spend this money the way you folks are seeing this, but this kind of falls into the example I'm going to is this. The Flatiron Building is deteriorating, as we all know. If the community center is part of the Flatiron Building, and I don't want it to be, but if it is, if the citizens want it to be that way, we're just kicking that ball further and further and further and further, and we don't accomplish anything. We just keep standing around, muttering around, and we're just not doing anything. I've been here for 14 years. On Valentine's Day, Carol and I came back to Mount Airy. We've been talking about Center Street ever since I've been back to Mount Airy. There was talk of Center Street when I was a child in Mount Airy in the 40s and the 50s. And it's really time to clear this issue up, to put it to bed. Let's spend this money. And I wanted to share that because people aren't calling me like they're calling Mr. Blatsford. I only talked to a few people, but again, we need to approve this money for this community center, get on with this project, and move along. And that's my comment.
Thank you.
Yeah, Pete, I appreciate your comment. Thank you. We're trying to do that. The idea of the financial plan and the briefings was to move us forward in that direction. I've heard enough resistance and heard some different ideas and different paths to take. One of the things I'm going to recommend to the mayor after this meeting is rather than hire a consultant to study what we should do, should probably put together a task force, because it certainly seems like we have enough citizen interest to list prioritized projects. So I'm very sensitive to that. We're trying to move it forward, but
The mayor is very sensitive to forming any more task force unless we can get some concrete production out of these task force. I formed a task force, and they made a recommendation, and it keeps getting kicked down the road. So the mayor won't be forming any task force until we can move forward and get some numbers so we know what the numbers are. We're talking about planning and making decisions, and we can't even get a number here to make a decision.
agreed.
So we're going to keep talking about the issue because I can go on all night.
Okay. Agreed.
As I recollect, I thought you moved on to ethics.
Oh, no, that was just.
Yeah, I thought we should. The vote's been called.
Wait, sorry, let me check the
Or
agenda.
ran away from, I should say.
Oh, we're done with ethics, okay.
We
Ethics.
skipped that, we
I'm
tabled
Dick
it.
Yeah, we'll
Swanson,
skip
and
that.
I'm Chair of the Ethics Commission, and my recommendation is that since MML is putting some pressure on the legislature to revisit the ethics law as it stands at the state, particularly with attention to the financial disclosure of elected officials, that rather than running the risk of amending our town code at this time and maybe having to amend it a second time, depending on what the legislative session does, I would suggest we defer, and if necessary, then we amend it once.
Are we working with the city of Gaithersburg at all?
I have not talked to them recently.
I have.
Good.
With their town, their city attorney, Lynn Ward.
Oh, you know her.
As well as, yes, and Frank, our former
Frank
mayor.
Johnson, former mayor.
As well as the Westminster town attorney, or city attorney. A couple of updates on that, actually, from a legal standpoint. Both Gaithersburg and Westminster are, have
Sorry, Tom,
filed.
I just want to
Sure.
interrupt you just for a
Sure.
moment, because if you're watching.
May not be context, sure.
Yeah, thank you. If you're watching on TV or you're new to the issue, there's no context. The context is as follows. The town council passed a new ethics ordinance. The town council, however, the state of Maryland has a whole series of what some of us consider onerous reporting requirements. The town council has passed an ordinance. The town council stripped out some of what the state of Maryland says we have to put in there. Speaking for myself, I want to be careful. Speaking for myself, the reason why we removed some of the mandatory things from the state was we're trying to make it easier for folks to run for election, not harder. So the council has passed an ordinance. It went to the state rejected it. So Councilman
Right.
King.
And
Can I
there were
further
Two
clarify?
issues.
There are only two issues where the state
And the council
differs and the
disagreed.
town
Thank you.
differ.
But let me, I'm sorry,
the-
Dick, let me get to Councilman King. So go ahead, Councilman.
Gosh, I forgot what I was gonna say now. Get it back to Dick, it'll come back to me.
Well, I'm sorry, then Tom was going over status. I just wanted to give context.
Go ahead.
The ordinance that was passed was sent to the state. They actually approved the entire ordinance as compliant with state law, with the exception of two sections that deal with financial disclosure for elected officials. That's a major step forward in that our law, for the most part, now complies with state law in terms of all the definitions, conflict of interest, you talk about lobbying, you talk about financial reporting for employees and commission members, you talk about all the administrative procedures, you talk about all the penalties that the Ethics Commission is empowered to either levy or recommend. So, to be clear, we only have two areas that we differ from the state, and that's important because it is only those two areas where any action that the town would take or the Ethics Commission would take could contravene state law.
And in discussion with both Lynn Board, Gaithersburg, and also the city attorney for Westminster, they have actually presented a couple of legal challenges to the failure of the Maryland State Ethics Commission's rejection of their proposed ordinances, or more specifically, requests to deviate from what the state demands in terms of financial disclosure. One, they have done it administratively directly, first of all, with the State Ethics Commission. They filed, pursuant to basically an internal procedure, a challenge to their decision. They've also filed suit in the Circuit Court for Carroll County, seeking essentially an order that the State Ethics Commission essentially was wrong in failing to approve their request for variances, if you will, from what state ethics is requiring. So I did want to bring you all up to date on that. The suit has just recently been filed. These challenges, I think it was in December 1, 2014. So these are fairly fresh challenges to the State Ethics Commission as to their requiring strict adherence to various of the disclosure requirements that they're seeking to hold us to, and the other municipalities that have not yet passed an ethics ordinance. I don't know that they've quite come out and asked me to present to you all the option of joining them in this legal battle, but they did ask that I at least make you all aware that it is going on. I haven't had the ability, nor would I attempt to assess their chances of success. There are allegations that the State Ethics Commission itself has not followed the Open Meetings Act in various of its decision-making, and has not also followed the Administrative Procedures Act in rendering determinations that they would reject a municipality's request to deviate or for a variance, if you will, from the various requirements. Again, I don't comment on the merits of any of that, but those are the allegations in part that are contained. I mention them. They are kind of ironic that the State Ethics Commission is charged with not following its own ethics rules, but that's maybe neither here nor there. It's an aside, but anyway, I did want to make you all aware that there are these challenges that do exist and are fresh and are pending.
If you could share a copy of that filing with the Ethics Commission, appreciate it.
Sure, absolutely. I'll send it to you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Great.
Any questions from the council? So we'll just let this one, so leave this one alone for now. Okay, thank you. Okay, under new business, Summit Ridge Forest Conservation Deed and easement documents. So, just since we're talking about ethics, there are at least two councilmen sitting at this table that live at Summit Ridge. So Tom, if you could describe to us what's required, knowing that two of the councilmen sitting at the table live in Summit Ridge, we want to make sure we don't run into any ethical issues here.
There are no ethical issues that are presented to vote on this. Basically, these easement documents are pursuant to county code, I believe, that requires the setting aside of certain portions of this subdivision for forest conservation, basically, in a nutshell. And this is here. These documents were prepared, I believe, by the county. They weren't prepared by me. Fairly standard pro forma, and are here simply to get the council's approval to allow the mayor's signature on the document.
Okay.
And this is pursuant to county ordinance, so.
Okay, so Barney, correct me, because there may be a discrepancy in our packages. So for Summit Ridge, we have three documents: Public Works Agreements, T00007F. Second one seems to be T98015F. And then the third one, T97011F. Those are the three that I have in my packet listed for Summit Ridge.
There's four. There's four.
Well, I have a fourth, but that's Watkins Park.
I apologize.
So, yeah, I'm just following our agenda. So, 3 for Summit Ridge?
Yep.
Okay. So, do I have a motion to approve?
Make a motion.
Motion to approve, a second?
I'll second.
A second, any questions?
No.
Seeing none, all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
All right, it's unanimous. The next one we have is Forest Conservation Plan easement, Watkins Park, and that's Public Works Agreement T09014S. This does not appear on the agenda. Okay, but it's still part of the packet. So your intent to pass this one as well, correct? Okay, so do I have a motion on that one?
Make a
Ken,
motion.
so motions. Second?
I'll second.
Bob, any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Passes. Next item on the agenda is release of bonding, St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church. And then, once again, on this one, the motion is to release $16,175.41. That being said, again, I'll ask Tom. I have a potential conflict of interest. My wife is a member of the St. Andrews community. If I recuse myself, we no longer have a quorum and can't pass this. But there's no personal interest, personal gain from this, so I don't believe I have a conflict unless you disagree.
No, I do not believe you have a conflict. I do agree with you.
Okay. All right. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to.
We have a motion. Do I have a second? Second. Any questions? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes. New business, Summit Ridge. Where is, this is the old one. Debbie, do we have the new one with the parking discussion? Did that make it on the agenda?
Yes, it did make it on here, Chris.
Okay, you have a new one?
Yeah, there should, the agenda has it.
Downtown parking and economic
Thank you.
development
Yeah, I've got it.
discussion.
I'm just working off an old copy. Yeah, I have this, thank you. Okay. The next issue, this is for discussion, for the council, potentially for referral to the EDC. What I've given the council is an article that comes out of the Washington Post newspaper about 2 or 3 weeks ago. In a sense, what the article discusses is a small town in Illinois who's of 18,000 residents, and what the small town essentially has done is they put parking meters up and down their main street. And the idea of the parking meters is not to fine people and generate revenue. The idea is to enforce turnover. So this was an article I had in the back of my head I'd read a few weeks ago. Yesterday, as I was visiting one of the businesses in downtown, speaking to the owner, they had remarked they had had a very good Christmas, which is very encouraging for a downtown. But they also remarked, hey, why don't you guys consider putting up parking meters along Main Street just to ensure that there's continuing turnover? The business owner in particular would mention the fact that this car always shows up, parks outside of his business on Main Street, and sits there the entire day. Ergo, it's not as easy for someone coming to town to shop to occupy that spot. So I bring this up, and if the council's okay with it, the idea would be to refer it to EDC to see if EDC wants to recommend we take action. And again, it's to try to help our downtown by turning over the parking spaces.
I will be more than happy to refer this to EDC and.
Mr. Mayor.
Just when you bring it to EDC, bring up the fact that historically we did have parking meters. What you're going to find is you're going to find your shops that are retail. They want to have quick turnover. Bang, bang, bang. Your places that are doing hair salons and personal services, they want long-term. You're going to have a huge conflict. Depends on who you talk to. We recently did a survey. I say recently because for me, 2-3 years ago, this is recently, regarding parking meters, and I would suggest that EDC look to those findings, and I believe they were overwhelmingly no.
Okay.
However, I support this. I think if this works, it's a little different. Let's take a look at it. You should explore these things. You should look at these things. That's what we were elected to do.
Okay.
Ken, any questions, concerns? Okay. All right, then.
I will take that to EDC.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Let's see, I'm still working off the old one, so I guess we're into
That's it.
reports, right?
Mayor's report.
Yeah,
Okay.
mayor's report.
Okay, actually, this is just a mayor's message for the new year. As we bid farewell to 2014, I want to take a moment to thank everyone for an amazing year. Words cannot fully express the honor it has been to serve as mayor of the residents of the town of Mount Airy. When I ran for mayor, it was to make sure we did not become another Germantown or Gaithersburg. I don't think a community center would turn us into one. During the past 5 years, I've been afforded the great privilege of working alongside citizens of Mount Airy who continue to make our town the place that we call home. With much gratitude, I look forward to more of the same in the next few years. Our strong community foundation exists only as a result of the efforts, dedication, perseverance of all the citizens who unselfishly give of their time and talents over the past decade. Those are the citizens that serve on our task force, that serve in our Mount Airy Nets, that serve in our Kiwanis clubs, that serve in our Lions. The new year is upon us, and we continue to strengthen our foundation to make a positive difference in the daily lives of our fellow citizens. As we reflect on the past year, may we be encouraged by all of our successes and the gained wisdom from which that challenged us. Together, we will move forward, fostering respect for the town's past, inspiring determination needed to accomplish the present goals, and generating optimism for the future. I'm wishing everybody a happy new year. And with that, I'll move straight into my appointments. I am appointing Catherine Trevilla for Recycling and Sanitation and Jeff McGee for Ethics Commission to pull him up to from an alternate to a full member. And my reappointments will be, and again, I want to thank these people for offering to serve again. Dick, you may be looking at another task force here soon, by the way. Bruce Walls, Board of Supervisors. Dick Swanson, Board of Supervisors. Letitia Woods, Board of Supervisors. Mark Moxley, Board of Supervisors. Those are all Board of Supervisors of Elections, by the way. Tom Neff, Recycling and Sanitation. I ask that you approve all of the following.
I'll make the motion that they all be approved.
Second?
And a second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous, thank you, Mr. Mack. EDC, Water and Sewer.
Okay, water and sewer, we had 0.726 million gallons average per day moving through the wastewater treatment plant this month. At our last meeting, we discussed I guess it's a MOA, Memorandum of Agreement, between Carroll County and the municipalities and the effect it would have on us, and when would be the best time to apply for projects and everything through this memorandum. Next meeting is on the 7th. That is this Wednesday, 7 o'clock at Town Hall. Rick, raise your hand. Dick, raise your hand. I mean, these are the guys you would be working with. So please, sign up to work with this Water Commission. They are doing absolutely outstanding work. Economic Development Commission, we had no December meeting, but we had the December 10th business card exchange in concert with the Greater Mount Airy Chamber of Commerce. I don't know how many of you are here. This was an awesome event again. Okay, the girls down in the basement. Okay, the girls down in the basement.
Watch the basement comment. That means a little to me.
You know what? They did an awesome job again. It just amazes me how it gets better and better every year.
It was an awesome job.
And also the chamber was having some problems with their scholarship fund, and they were looking to try to raise $2,200 to put in their scholarship fund, and they actually raised $2,350. So they did a great job. And all of the business in town, if they didn't give food, they gave something to be sold at the silent auction. So it was a great event. And the next EDC meeting will be on Wednesday, the 28th of January at 7:30 p.m. at Town Hall. Mr. Phoebus and I in December had the honor and pleasure of attending the legislative dinner for the Frederick County Maryland Municipal League. We got to meet some of the new people that got elected, and they wanted us to bring back information that the priorities for the upcoming general session, which starts here real soon. They're going to start hammering all these legislators in Annapolis about restoration of 100% of the municipal highway user revenues. That is a big issue. We want to make sure that happens. Local governing body consideration and approval of comprehensive plan recommendations. We were very lucky that we didn't have these problems, but there's been several opinions from the Attorney General in the last couple of years that don't really jive with an elected body being able to change